So let me say a little bit about the science, empirical science that I do in economics. And what it's like to do that science. Of course, I'm kind of interested in here the special feature of doing this science, which is how do I think about the concept, my relation to the concepts, to the actual concepts that we're using. Now, the topic in economics on which I can claim to have the greatest expertise is intertemporal discount. So that, in other words, the relationship between people's responses to prospective rewards that are available at different times. So present reward versus a future reward, or a reward in 1 week's time being compared with a reward available in 2 weeks' time, or a reward available in a year's time and another reward available in 5 years' time. Now the mathematics of that is quite subtle, and it actually admits of quite importantly different mathematical treatments under different conditions. So we pull out different families of functions, different parameters, quite actually different ways of doing the math, depending on whether we're looking at one agent or many agents, right? Whether we've got a visceral reward option in the choice set. A visceral reward is just you can ask me if you're interested later, so it doesn't matter anything else. And also the scales at which the reward options are distinguished, or taken to be distinguished by the valuer. It seems to me that Mark's facade account describes my relationship to the mathematics of intertemporal discount very nicely. We do not have a unified theory. So if you wanted me to give a lecture on intertemporal discounting, I would not give you axioms. Right? I would not say, here, this is it, and then write a bunch of equations down. So, well, it depends. Here's how you must model it in these circumstances. Here's how you must model it in these other circumstances. And then you would ask me, well, what happens when the circumstances get mixed up? Right? And you've got these different frameworks. Well, right, that's going to be a really complicated set of stories. It's going to depend how the circumstances mix them up. Now, one of my collaborators, my closest collaborator at the moment, so another economist, is an expert on risk attitudes. And what he is an expert on is also highly mathematically subtle and highly circumstance contingent. It's at least as complicated as intertemporal discount. Now, the various applications that we do, so the experimental designs and the interpretations of our data, right, require us, it's not optional given the phenomena we're studying, to work with psychologists, like individuals and groups, require us to use these ideas together. Right? So in one and the same experiment, we're using both risk, we're testing for risk attitudes, and we're using the risk attitudes as control variables in models of intertemporal discount. We very often, in fact every single time we work together, invariably when we're designing a new experiment, we invariably exchange a bunch of emails which could be glossed as saying things like, me to him or him to me. No, you didn't understand the last email I sent you. You're missing some crucial feature of my concept. Not the one that's in my docket of responsibility. To make things yet more complicated, we work with psychologists in our research team, who, unlike us, deal not just with different concepts, but different kinds of concepts from the modeling point of view. So psychologists tend to work with what we call reflective constructs. This results from the fact that psychologists are often interested in what they call latent conditions. So latent states that they don't suppose they'll ever be able to directly observe, but they infer in rather special ways. For reasons I won't go into, but could happily discuss if people are interested in later on, we can't, in economics, because we're committed to certain methods of analyzing our data, econometrics, we can't work with reflective constructs. Right? You can't do econometrics with it. So we have a different way of constructing concepts altogether, and it's driven by the fact that we want to be able to analyze them with certain technology. When we're working with psychologists, therefore, we use double distance problem that we don't even have concepts at the same time. And when we try as much as possible to organize our research so that these issues just won't come up. They have their models, we have our models, and we navigate all sorts of complicated ways of trying to get interesting conclusions out of the independent use of the two families of models. And I'm the leader of the research group, so I chair these meetings. Once in a while, we really hit an issue where we have to make some kind of accommodation between the different conceptual families. Then we have the whole team in the conversation. And the point of the conversation is to sort of catch and try to correct, and I think what Mark's idea of property dragging is exactly right here, catch cases where the psychologists understand the economists' concepts by imposing, by dragging some of the properties of their concepts over into the economist domain and vice versa. I think this happens a lot. And I'm sure, by the way, if a really astute philosopher of science were up on the wall studying our conversations, they would catch a lot of this that we do not catch. And undoubtedly, we've learned from each other in an implicit sense. I probably don't use, my use of my own concepts has probably been kind of infected by property dragging from there, the psychologists. Now, right, that's just I'm reflecting on the fact that I'm doubtful that I can claim to be a full expert then, to be full master of the very concepts I use in my own time. And I think that goes for everyone in my group. That seems to us to be an important sense in which not just the science itself reflects distributed activity and division of labor, but the conceptual understanding, our understanding of our concepts, is actually distributed. Now Mark says, Mark at one point, refers to the usual neo-Kantian inclination to treat scientific objectivity as the sharing of investigative standards between different public parties, rather than direct correspondence with empirical reality. Allied themes, he says, remain popular in philosophical circles today, though I will have no truck with them myself. Something no one does in America, something no one has in America, as far as I can see, is a little truck. Clearly, one need not go so far as to identify the kind of intersubjective agreement that is achieved when we resolve one of our meetings and decide, yeah, we're on track. This is the right way to design the experiment. Or yes, this is the right interpretation of our data, despite the fact that none of us fully understand, right, what we just did. That no one individual does. Right? Despite that, we need to not go so far as identifying that agreement we achieved with objectivity. So let's go the realist way, as objectivity is corresponding to the world. But nevertheless, we can say that as the facades grow more complex, and in particular, by complex, I mean specifically get distributed in this way I just described, intersubjective agreement becomes the increasingly essential basis for confidence that we have objectivity, right? That we are tracking the world. I mean, without intersubjective agreement, again, I can't completely understand what we're doing, and neither can the rest.